Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. On today's edition of the program, our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz is going to be leading a conversation with the leader of a group of relatives of the 9 American citizens killed by La Línea, also known as the Juarez cartel, back in 2019, and their push to have the federal government designate the Juarez cartel as terrorists, as well as the recent massacres and acts of terror being blamed on that group. But first, as always, let's go ahead and start by taking a look at what's trending across the border, starting with the Department of Homeland Security said on Wednesday that it has launched a federal immigration crackdown in New Orleans. Now, instead of being called Operation Swamp Sweep, which is the name we had been told initially, the name is now called Operation Catahoula Crunch. Now, a DHS spokeswoman says federal agents will target undocumented immigrants who are known criminals. Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said, quote, "Sanctuary policies endanger American communities by releasing illegal criminal aliens and forcing DHS law enforcement to risk their lives to remove criminal aliens that should have never been put back on the streets," end quote. Now, this plan calls for agents to arrest more than 5,000 immigrants over the next couple of months. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry, a Republican, has said he welcomes the intervention in the Democrat-run city. According to police, crime in the city of New Orleans has dropped significantly and is on pace to have its lowest number of homicides in nearly half a century. There's another similar sting that also began in Minneapolis on Wednesday. Moving on, U.S.-operated flights returning deported migrants to Venezuela will continue despite President Donald Trump's assertion to consider the country's airspace closed. Venezuela's government announced earlier this week that the twice-weekly flights will proceed following a request from the Trump administration. The government had previously announced the flights had been suspended. An application by Eastern Airlines for a Wednesday arrival was made public by Venezuela's foreign affairs minister. The flight on Wednesday landed in La Guaira, the capital city of the Venezuelan state of the same name. The Venezuelans have been steadily deported this year after President Nicolás Maduro, under U.S. pressure, ended his policy of not accepting deportees. More than 13,000 migrants have been deported this year. Moving on, pollution in the Tijuana River Valley near San Diego is making people sick. Researchers are asking those who live in the area to get involved in a survey to figure out how the pollution is impacting residents. Our Salvador Rivera has the story.
Judging by the foam in the water, the Tijuana River is still carrying a lot of raw sewage, chemicals, and other materials, giving it a washing machine effect. Studies have proven that when the contaminated water splashes, it releases dangerous gases into the air, making people sick.
Because of this transfer from the water to the air, and then also people just being near the river and the ocean, it's absolutely making people sick, especially when it's really contaminated.
Dr. Paula Granados is a researcher with San Diego State University. She and other scientists are trying to figure out how badly the pollution in the Tijuana River Valley is affecting residents. To do so, they are conducting an online survey and have been for more than a year.
What we're seeing is people saying that they're having a hard time sleeping, they're having headaches, they're having GI illnesses, and we're seeing collectively more people reporting those types of symptoms at the same times, during the same time that they're also reporting odors.
Dr. Granados says the survey is ongoing and more residents, even if they don't live or work near the valley, are welcomed.
The more people that fill it out, the more data we have. We definitely need more people from like National City and South Chula Vista and Coronado. We've got a lot coming from Imperial Beach and South San Diego as well, but we need all of the South Bay communities to participate so we understand if they're being impacted or not. We all really appreciate them telling us how they're feeling, because that's the only way we're going to figure this out. Sometimes they're not sick enough to go to the doctor maybe, but they still have to stay home from work or school. I think the bottom line is that the more evidence that we have, of how this is impacting our communities, the better off we are with coming up with solutions, hopefully faster, to stop it. This has been going on for too long. It needs to stop.
People can take part in the survey by logging on to tjriver.sdsu.edu.
There's wastewater flowing through this community that's full of sewage and chemicals, and it shouldn't be there. Nobody should have to live through this.
Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
And that is a look at what's trending across the border today. But stay with us, because when we come back, we're going to be speaking with the president of AmFACT, Adriana Jones, about the group's push to move the federal government to designate the Juarez cartel as terrorists, as well as the recent violence being blamed on the Juarez cartel. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to Border Report Live. Joining me now on the program is our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, and the president of AmFACT, Adriana Jones. If we could get them pulled up there, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today, Adriana.
Thank you so much for having me.
Julian?
Rudy, as you know, I've been covering the Mexican drug cartels for the past 5 or 6 years, not just because of the danger to national security in the U.S. that they represent, but also because of the impact that they make, the damage they leave behind in people both in the U.S. and Mexico. In the U.S. primarily through the distribution of drugs and the thousands of drug overdose deaths that come from consuming their product. In Mexico, however, the story is a little different. The story is that a lot of people are dying. The Mexican government tells me that it's mostly people associated with the drug trade, in other words, rivals killing rivals. But in the course of my reporting, I have discovered numerous instances of innocent bystanders and just third parties who get affected by this violence. Unfortunately, that was the case in November of 2019, when a number of family members who were U.S. citizens were traveling from Mexico to the border, and something really bad happened. So, Ms. Jones, can you please tell us about why AmFACT was formed? Because it stemmed from that very regrettable incident.
Thank you so much, Julian. I appreciate the opportunity. So AmFACT comes from a place of extreme heartache. Like you said perfectly, both countries, Americans and Mexicans, are targeted by cartels every single day, but in different ways. On the U.S. side, we have fentanyl poisonings. You know, on average, 200 families getting the news every single day that they have lost a member to fentanyl poisoning. It is truly an epidemic. In Mexico, it's, to put it simply, the cartels are holding communities hostage. They are using terror. They are terrorists in every way that you could possibly define that word. My sister was massacred by cartels on November 4th of 2019. She was around a mile from her home on a road that she had traveled hundreds of times. It was 10:30 in the morning, broad daylight, tall blonde with 4 children, and they opened fire on her vehicle. They walked up, and when my 12-year-old nephew tried to escape, they shot him point blank. There were 2 8-month-old twins and my 10-year-old niece in the vehicle, along with my sister. And they then gave the order to burn it. So they burned them alive in the vehicle once they'd shot them up. This level of violence isn't perpetrated for any other purpose than to create terror so they can control those states, those regions, and those borders. The Agua Prieta border, which is just miles from where this took place, is the leading border crossing for fentanyl in the U.S. It is absolutely the exact same cartels that go out and mass murder people and do these types of terrible things, like the Juarez cartel and La Línea. The despicable, the level of inhumane actions against civilians that they do every day are the exact same cartels that are pushing fentanyl across our borders and poisoning Americans every single day. They are the worst of the worst, terrorists in every definition of the word. And every single day that the Juarez cartel is not designated a terrorist is another day they grow more powerful, is another day that they continue to hurt American families. It's another day that we have to be afraid. They are only growing more powerful.
Yes, Ms. Jones. Speaking of that, one of the reasons that we're speaking today is because the U.S. government has designated several criminal organizations throughout the Western Hemisphere as foreign terrorist organizations. And what that means is that the full force of the government, the American government, can go after their assets, can pursue them wherever they are. And I think we're seeing some of that in the high seas right now. Now, of those 8 groups that were so designated, and the 9th group that was recently designated from Venezuela, one group is glaringly missing, and I believe that's one of the quests that your organization is pursuing right now. Why is La Línea, why is the Juarez cartel not part of that terror designation? Can you tell us about your efforts at the legislative level to get this done?
Absolutely. I'm still absolutely confounded on how the Juarez cartel and La Línea were not on that original list. To go out and kill American families like that and to be left off of a list is it seems impossible to me that they haven't been placed on it. That said, we have done everything in our power. The nonprofit that we created, AmFACT, which stands for American Families Against Cartel Violence, does seek to have the Juarez La Línea cartel designated terrorists. We believe that's a crucial step because not only will it allow the U.S. government to go after and use all of the tools at their disposal to go after them as terrorists, but it puts a lot of pressure on the Mexican government to keep those that have been arrested, to actually sentence them with the sentencing levels that they deserve and keep those terrorists off the street at the end of the day. I believe that the U.S. and Mexico have to cooperate on this. It's a binational issue. It affects Americans and Mexicans, and the only solution is working together. But AmFACT also seeks to find a way for victims to be able to tell their story. We know we're not the only Americans that have suffered by cartel terrorism. We know that so many families are heartbroken every single day. We believe that, I truly believe that a victim-led organization will have a ripple effect for generations, that if we can find a way to help them find justice, to create systems within our legislation that can help them go after these cartels. First, by naming the Juarez and La Línea and other terrorist organizations what they are, terrorists, but also just give them pathways to seek their own justice. I believe that that's a start.
Yes, Ms. Young. Now that you mention it, some people might be wondering, well, what makes La Línea special? Why were they not named? Maybe they're too small. Well, I can contribute some to that. According to the Treasury Department and other U.S. government agencies that I consult, La Línea is one of the main exporters of illicit synthetic drugs to the United States. According to the Treasury Department in the U.S., La Línea, Juarez cartel, exports daily large amounts of methamphetamine, cocaine, and fentanyl to the United States. Also, they are suspected of multiple criminal activities. And speaking of terror, what the unfortunate event that touched your family is not the only one that has happened. In fact, just recently, just a few weeks ago, just days ago, I covered a massacre attributed to this group that happened in a racetrack in southern Chihuahua. 7 people were killed. Police tell me, well, 3 of them had a criminal record. Well, what about the other 4? Were they innocent bystanders? And this just reflects, number one, the brazenness, the violence, the ruthlessness that is used by this group, and also the fact that this massacre in South Chihuahua a few days ago happened in a public place where there was a lot of members of the public. And it's not the only one. Earlier this year, I covered the discovery by the Chihuahua State Police of several mass graves just south of Casas Grandes, which is also very close to the U.S. border, to the state of New Mexico. At the time, I reported that the Mexican authorities pulled 40 bodies from those graves. I now can update everybody that the number of bodies that were pulled from that grave were 90. We do have pictures of that event, but it's just too gruesome to show. But it illustrates perfectly that this is an organization that is not small time. It's an organization that operates internationally through borders, and that also controls several smaller gangs here in Juarez. I've written numerous stories about the activities of some of the gangs that they employ, such as La Empresa, such as the Barrio Azteca. So it is a transnational organization. Also, and Rudy, if we can show this clip, earlier this year, just a couple of months ago, we covered the assassination, the murder of 3 police officers, 2 males and 1 female, who were ambushed by La Línea just because they encroached on their territory, like if they were rivals. Rudy, if we can play that tape, please.
Having a slight technical difficulty there, Julian. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I also cannot see your screen.
We'll get that up for you.
Are we on pause, Rudy?
No, you're still there. Go ahead, Julian.
Okay. All right, Ms. Jones. Anyway, that's what I have to contribute to this discussion. Anything else that you wanted to? Okay, there we go. Yeah, these are scenes. What we're looking right now are scenes from some bodies are hanging by an overpass on the Pan American Highway, which is one of the main avenues that connects Mexico to the United States. Thousands of travelers pass through this highway every day, and that is what they got to see earlier this year. As you see, the Mexican government discourses, well, they just fight among each other. They don't affect the population. I think that any family traveling on that highway got to see those bodies, and I can only imagine the terror, especially if they were traveling with children, the terror that those families experienced just watching those bodies hanging from the overpass. Certainly, I believe that would be classified as an act of terror because it's not just meant for the rivals. Everybody saw it. And we have other examples, like I mentioned. We talked about the ambush of those 3 police officers in Chihuahua. Those were not criminals; they were human beings. We later learned their identities, that they had families, that they had aspirations, and they were gunned down by this group. If we can play that tape, Rudy. We seem to be having some technical difficulties, but I think the point has been made. Okay, now what we're looking at is last year, a cluster of 8 bodies were found piled together, as you can see, right next to another freeway. This is close to Chihuahua City. Everybody who was passing through that highway, whether it was truckers on the way to deliver goods to the U.S. from Mexican plants, or again, families traveling to the border or from the border, got to see that macabre spectacle, which is just the bodies laying there on the street for everybody to see. Obviously, again, an act of terror. Rudy?
Yes, Mr. Jones, I did want to ask, have you spoken to anybody on Capitol Hill about this push? We do know, for example, there are definitely former federal law enforcement that are behind this push. They have been for a few years, but have you been able to speak with anybody on Capitol Hill that's supporting this potential federal terrorist, or rather a terrorist designation?
We have visited Capitol Hill on many occasions, spoken to different senators and congressmen. Unanimously, everybody who hears this story obviously supports me. I mean, I go in and it's pretty hard not to feel the pain of what happened. I believe most people are on board We have two bills that we have been working on that will be presented in Congress towards these efforts. And we're just trying to push to get them open. We haven't finalized anything yet, but AmFACT is working very, very hard on that as we speak.
And what do you think is kind of holding back the, our Congress from pushing this forward sooner? Is there anything that you think that might be, limiting them, or do you think it's just, the fact that there's not a whole lot of people other than groups like yourself talking about this more?
So I'm hopeful because finally somebody's talking about it. People have been being murdered for a decade now. I mean, the numbers are astronomical. We did a study recently that proving that the numbers that come out of Mexico for murders per day in every state are actually fudged by up to 50%. So not only are those numbers horrific, they're actually wrong. It's double what you're seeing. And the amount of violence is, it's a tsunami level now at this point. And so I feel like there's finally some movement. As far as the reason they haven't been designated and they're not moving faster, I just think there's just a lot going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And you have to remind Americans that with everything going on in the world, this is what's happening on your border. This is crossing your border every single day. This is not something that can be put on the back burner. It is affecting you. I just can't even express, like, when you really go and look at the data, the amount of Americans dying every day due to cartel violence is horrific. Everything that Julian said is absolutely true. The fact that La Línea is very relevant. The Juarez cartel is very relevant. I wish they weren't, but they are. There are absolutely atrocious things happening on that border every single day. These cartels are becoming more and more brazen. They are crossing drugs. They are killing people every single day. And we honestly just need to do everything we can to stop them. We can't do enough. There has to be full cooperation between the U.S. and Mexico and everybody getting involved.
And that's now something that you've mentioned twice, once speaking to Julian and once just now, is that cooperation between the U.S. and Mexico. And it just so happens that tomorrow, the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, is going to be in D.C. at the Kennedy Center, joining President Trump as the draw for the 2026 World Cup happens. If you had 5 minutes to be in the room with both President Trump and President Sheinbaum, what would your statement or message be to them in that room?
Please, people are dying. Every single day, 300 families have to bury their dead. And don't tell me they're cartel members, because I know better. I know what these cartels are doing. Please work together. Mexico cannot solve this problem without the U.S., and the U.S. cannot solve this problem without Mexico. If we don't do everything in our power to stop this cartel terrorism epidemic, where will we be 20 years from now? The murders have absolutely gone off the charts, and they will continue to grow. The poisonings, the deaths from fentanyl, all of it will continue to increase unless we work together and do something about it. Let's get every one of these cartels on that list, starting with Juarez and La Línea, and keep going and do everything that we can.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ms. Jones. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but we would definitely love to have you on the program in the future as your group works to get this terrorist designation on not just the Juarez cartel, but as you said, every cartel in Mexico. Well, thank you so much again. We've been speaking with Adriana Jones of AmFACT on their push to get the federal government to label the Juarez cartel as terrorist. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. We mentioned it shortly before the break that President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico would be in attendance in Washington tomorrow to attend the draw for the 2026 World Cup at the Kennedy Center. She's going to be joining President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney as the three countries are co-hosting next summer's tournament. Now, this will be the first time that Sheinbaum meets face-to-face with Trump. The two leaders were scheduled to meet during the G7 summit held in Canada in June, but that bilateral meeting was canceled at the last minute because Trump had to return to Washington early to address tensions between Israel and Iran. Sheinbaum said it's not decided yet if she would take advantage of her visit to Washington to have a private meeting with Trump. The World Cup kicks off June 11th at the Azteca Stadium in Mexico City and runs through the final on July 19th at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Today, Transportation Secretary Sean P. Duffy hosted a FIFA 2026 World Cup summit to kick off festivities surrounding the final draw. And before we go, we wanted to remind you to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It is a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. This week's episode, or rather, Nextstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on data. And that's going to do it for us today. For Julian in El Paso, my name's Rudy. We'll see you all next time.